it's not really magic. It's just brain science, but still,
Right.
it's kind of magic.
A lot of what we call magic is actually brain science.
Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 114 of the podcast. It is May 17th, 2023, as we record this. And today we're talking about manifesting what you want or need in your business. We don't have any new patrons this week, but thank you so much to our existing patrons. It warms my heart to know that you believe in us and that you believe the podcast is worthy of your attention and that you listen every week. And thank you, thank you, thank you. So you can go to patreon.com/Valerie Isan, IHSAN. And for as low as $1 a month, you can get a postcard from me, a shout out on the podcast. We can make announcements for you if you have any ads you want us to read out, or that you won some cool award, or that you want to promote
You've released a book?
Yeah, you've released a book. You
Yeah.
want us to promote that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We're
Patreon.
here for that. We're here.
Yeah, we want to celebrate with you. That's awesome. You can also go to patreon.com/Strange Air Stories for paranormal mysteries written by Mr. Erick.
Written by me.
Author update. Honestly,
Should I go first?
I mean, you can if you want. I'll just go. Honestly, I'm battling a lot with balance right now.
Okay.
So,
as one does.
Periodically, yes, it just comes up in my world anyway. I'm having a lot of things that I find take me away from my writing these days, last couple of weeks especially. And I don't know if they're legit things. Part of me thinks they are, but part of me wonders if it's just procrastination or resistance or, something else that's keeping me from the page. So I think it's important to check in with yourself when a lot of stuff gets in the way. I mean, sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's totally legit. I've got aging parents that are taking more time, in my life.
Right.
Some things in my life right now are taking more time and energy than they used to. One of those is aging parents. I have to go and see them more often and help them more often. The Costa Rica move, that's not imminent, but 18 months away. There's a lot of stuff to do. And so I'm doing a lot of Costa Rica research, and we're still trying to figure out what we want to do for housing. Right now we're thinking about, let's buy a yurt and put that on the land, instead of renting when we go down there. And so there's just a lot of research and that we're doing right now about that. And that's really upped its frequency and time commitment too. Also, I've made a commitment to be healthier, so I'm going to yoga as often as I can. Right now, that's about 2 or 3 times a week. But that takes a huge amount of time, the class is 90 minutes and it's in Eugene. So that's a 20-minute drive and then back. And then there's the showering that you do right afterwards, because hot yoga is really freaking sweaty. And so as soon as you're done with class, you take a shower. So, that's 3 hours kind of. And then as soon as I get home, I eat lunch. So that's a huge chunk of my day that is spent on yoga. And I am committed to it because I need to be healthier. And I feel like my health is also interrupting my writing time, because sometimes I just don't feel well enough to sit down at the desk. So I need it. I need rest, so all of these life things seem like they're getting in the way. And I don't know if that is me letting it, or if I need to, change my mindset around something. So that's been kind of happening for me in the last couple weeks. In terms,
sorry to hear that.
Well, it's just part of the process of of getting to know yourself and getting to know your author business and yeah. Client wise, I've been doing more editing than coaching the last couple of weeks, and kind of a segue into what we're going to talk about a little bit later. I've been thinking a lot about my relationship to money lately, and how old mindset, stuff that just doesn't serve me anymore. I want to shed that and be really intentional about the wording I use around new beliefs about money,
Hmm.
and create a new core identity of someone who makes money easily and has abundance in their life monetarily. And yeah, so those are some things that I've been working on lately.
Well, now I feel like my update is nothing quite like that, but I
My,
appreciate your I always
that
appreciate
was
your
that was
honesty. And
glossing over, like I haven't written very much.
well, I know, but look, I mean, you could come at that reality from two ways. You can come at it from a position of like bitterness or, resentment for not writing, or you can come at it from like philosophical and
It's
like a
curiosity.
self-nurturing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, what's
So
causing this? What's going on?
right. And so for that reason, I appreciate, how how you put that. Yeah. Okay. I'll start client business first. I mean, again, I keep saying to myself, I have a semi-dormant website. When I look at traffic is fairly low, but I have had more new clients in the last like 2 or 3 weeks come through than I've had all year. So
Hmm.
something's happened. Like there's like, when you're talking about SEO, which we did, and sort of visibility, I don't, there's a lot of it you plan for, and then there's a lot of it that feels like it comes out of the blue. It just like, this feels like it comes out of the blue. Um, and it's great. So I don't know. I think maybe I've manifested something. I think part of the manifestation is like, I sort of, and again, I might be sort of identifying this as manifestation, but when it comes to like client business, I just have a client in mind when I'm writing, when I'm doing site things, when I'm out there. I just think of the person that I want to work with, and I try to envision who they are and try to kind of like picture them reading, finding me, opening the blog, reading it, identifying with it. And I think that's worked. Um, Prior to this, when I just wrote things to put on my site. I struggled finding people because, like I didn't know who my reader was. I didn't know who my audience was, my ideal customer. So whatever's happening, it's happening, and it's happening fast, and I like it.
Awesome.
As far as like an author goes, I just finished a draft of Ceremony Shadow's next book in series. I like it. I'm kind of reflecting on last week because I don't want to say like I like it and it's done and nobody else has to read it, because I feel like there could be some holes. Writers group Gary could find some holes in it. So I'm trying to, but I felt really good about it when the draft got done. I felt like it accomplished what I wanted it to accomplish. So I'm kind of in a, look, I've got this book done, the next book done-ish, and then I have the third book in the line. I have the whole thing sort of outlined. So I don't know. I don't know where my path goes. I'm going to take a couple of days and just not think about that series and not write anything in it,
Mm-hmm.
just to have a little bit of distance from it. I have an anniversary coming this weekend, and so I'm just going to
Oh,
like kind
happy
of like,
anniversary.
thank you. I'm going to actually, I'm going to take like a couple of days just to work on client stuff and take my head out of the series game,
Mm-hmm.
and then see where I come up at the middle of next week. Like if I might, probably by the time I'm on this air again, I will have a path forward. But I may actually write the third of the 3 books. I might start just drafting that because it's the new shiny thing and it seems great. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. What are you reading?
Um, well, I just finished reading Manifest Your HEO by Heather Hildenbrand. It was an ARC that I got, but it is now out and available for everyone. It went out, I think, on Mother's Day. I think it went out on May 14th.
Hmm.
So, totally worth reading. I really enjoyed that. We'll talk more about that later. I got another library. The library. See, if you put holds on books, then library books come to you. There's a tip.
Right.
So I still have set aside The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue because all these library books keep coming up. So right now I'm reading Seeking Fortune Elsewhere, which is a book of short stories written by Sindhya Banu, an Indian writer. And just this morning when I was typing up that title, I saw that another book had come in from the library. So I am going to be quickly reading this book of short stories, so that I can, get to the next one, which is, do you remember when I read that Grady Hendrix book about, it was kind of a horror book about the Southern Book Club for
Yeah.
vampire slayers or something. I forget the
Yeah.
title exactly. So
Yeah.
it's another one of his books, The Final Girl Support Group. So I'm not sure exactly what that's about, but I liked his writing style. So I had,
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I mean, when you read that, I love his covers. His book
Mhm.
covers are outstanding. I'm in the market for a horror book cover. I'm gonna do an anthology, a horror anthology with a friend. And when we're kind of looking for like horror book covers that we like, and of
Mhm.
course Grady Hendrix comes up because they're all so just my best
Subtle.
friend's well, like my best friend's exorcism, I'm looking at him right now, is like an old video cover. Horror store looks like the cover of an IKEA catalog. Like he's just, there's style to them, and
Uh-huh.
it's really cool. So but I've never read any of them, so I'm gonna have to pick one up. I'm really tempted by the How to Sell a Haunted House, because that seems really
Yeah,
interesting to
I
me.
put a hold on that one too. So whenever that one comes up, it sounds funny, so it's horror, but not. I mean, it is horror, but
Right.
there's
But
enough
horror should be fun too.
comedic, you know, that that it doesn't keep me in a dark place for too long.
Right.
So he's
Right.
good at I guess that's emotional tone. He has a really great grasp of emotional tone. So he can get that creepy atmospheric, and then also take you to another place where you can breathe
Right.
and get invested in the characters and, so.
Right. And that's, yeah. I mean, that I think with horror, and it's something I read periodically. I don't read a ton of it. I used to read more of it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people that want that just like slash and dash kind of stuff, and it's fun. But I really think that the whole genre has been taken over by voice and tone, and for the better, right? I mean, I think all those genres have been taken over by voice and tone. It's not just enough to put the robots and the swords and sandals in your stories anymore. There has to be something, there has to be something sort of elevating it. And I just think it's, voice, character, tone, those things. So, um, and these are crossover hits too. I mean, these books are like, people are reading these books that are not horror fans. You're not a horror fan, you're reading them. So like, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think, yeah, I don't know what like keywords Grady Hendrix uses on Amazon. I haven't like researched hit the categories or anything that he uses, but I know that literary horror has become kind of a new-ish genre in the past few
Right.
years. And I
Right.
think that's what you're talking about, like
Yeah.
upscaling the genre of what you're writing in. So, you
Right.
know, literary fantasy or literary horror or literary thriller or something like that. So it's and I like that.
Yeah.
I used to be, I'm totally adding myself here. I used to be kind of a snob when it came to what I read. And I only read like mainstream literary fiction because I liked character driven stories. And I just didn't think that, you know,
Right.
I was one of those people.
Of
And
course. I was one of those people. Yeah.
and even before I started working in the bookstore, I realized, okay, like I need to get out of this rut of this is all that I'm reading. And if I want to be a better writer, I have to read in other genres and I have to read widely and take, so I discovered in the last few years, last decade, that there are a lot of genre fiction writers that write in a literary style,
Right.
and they put it
Right.
in the genre category because it sells better. And it is, I mean, it meets all the genre expectations and the reader expectations. So the reader isn't disappointed. They're getting a mystery, you know, with all of the mystery tropes or, you know, and obligatory scenes and everything, but it has that literary prose that I really
Right.
like.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too that I came out of an English major program like thinking I had to keep reading these books. Like you get the syllabus and then you got the recommended reading. And I think I spent 8 to 10 years reading the recommended reading from every syllabus I got in college. And I don't regret it at all because those were great books. And there's a part of me that wants to go back to that a little bit just to read a little more literary. Um, However, yeah, I think that a lot of people, I think it shows sort of a cultural shift, right? That, of the people who went and got, wanted to get literary here in their 20s were people that were watching and reading genre things in their teens and their youth, and they always enjoyed it, but they felt like, so I think it's a very similar journey to us as readers. Those writers were like, oh my gosh, I can only do this. So they bring that sensibility with them, and I think it's just elevates the genre altogether. If you go back and read an old anthology of horror stories, there's a lot of tropes, not a lot of interesting craft. That's a generalization, but nowadays everything is so unique, and so
Do you think that has
yay.
anything to do with being able to indie publish and not having those gatekeepers that say, "Oh no, this isn't really horror. You can't. This is, like the."
My theory aligns with that. My theory
Mhm.
is that because every genre, like there's the gatekeepers that became the tastemakers, and then the indies come in and then they publish what they're publishing without rules. And 90% of that stuff isn't taste making, but the really interesting independent horror, science fiction, fantasy, I think is influencing what those bigger markets want because they know their
Mm.
readers are reading in both pools. I think there's this misguided belief that people read indie books or people read, you know, trad pub books. Like
People don't
most
even
readers,
know who,
people
yeah,
don't know.
people
People
don't
wouldn't
know.
know.
I don't even
Uh,
know. As an independent author, I don't like, I mean, sometimes I can tell because I'm in the industry enough, like, okay, this is a self-published book cover, so
right, right.
but
But even that's becoming harder to go on because a lot of those independent authors are hip to the fact it's got to look like the book next to it that's not an
right.
indie book. So,
Yeah.
well, I
Okay.
just finished Then She Was Gone, Lisa Jewell,
Mm-hmm. Was that
British
good?
thriller author.
British, the thriller? Mm-hmm.
She's a British thriller author. It was good. It was good. It was just one of those books where it was like, a twist, like the whole book is a setup for a twist and a reveal. And I feel like when I'm reading and that's like the thriller genre, right? There's going to be a twist and a reveal, and the whole story is going to pivot. And I read till I get to the twist and the reveal. Then I have this sort of uncomfortable relationship with the twist and the reveal because I either see it or I didn't see it. And this one was pretty like, I don't want to say outlandish. It just seemed there was a lot of time spent in the story explaining the twist, like
Hmm.
not explaining it, but just like living in the twist so that it felt, I think it's in the interest of making that twist feel realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And while it was interesting and compelling and certainly like kind of like psychologically realistic, it also felt like are you just trying to explain this to me, or are you trying, just the author was explaining a lot of it and like building up a lot around it, so I got a little bogged down there, but it was all right. I mean, I like it. I'll hand it off back to my mother who gave it to me, and she'll talk about what a genius book it was, and then we'll, you know, that's how it goes with those thrillers. My mom loves them, chews them up like candy, and then I
Mm-hmm.
read them. I try not to be too critical with them because my mom is like such a huge fan, and I don't want her to be like getting my critical side. So But it was, here's what I found interesting in it. I don't want to dwell on it forever, but like it was, as reading a like sort of that like British domestic thriller written by a woman, there's just, it's very interesting what the author pays attention to details on, like fabrics, like the fabric of clothes, like the attire was described down to the fabric. It wasn't just, it's not the color. She didn't wear a black dress. She wore a black jersey dress. So I found myself reading the book, and then I've got my phone over here, like, what's a jersey dress? I had to like, or I'd ask my wife, like, what's this? Because she knows.
Mhm.
And so I just like it's just a very different attention to detail, because told through a woman's point of view, a domestic woman who's very focused on the domestic, the curtains, when you walk into a room, that woman notices the fabric of the curtains, the
So
style,
maybe
like,
you weren't the market for that book.
oh, I'm definitely not in that instance, I'm definitely not the market for that book. But I find it interesting because, like my character would just notice that he would notice that the curtains are open or closed. Like
Yeah.
so it just made me realize how different the function of setting and scene
Mm,
and just description are in different genres.
that's
It
cool.
wouldn't be a very domestic woman point of view if she didn't notice those
Hmm.
details that a middle-aged rural
Was this
cop.
part of a series? So same character?
No, no,
No?
no.
Okay.
It's no, I don't think so. Um she's the woman is Lisa Jewell, prolific author. She's got so many books, and I didn't find any through lines, but I'd pick up another one. If my mom said read this
Yeah,
one, I'd
I
read
think
it.
that
It's
sounds good. I, I
yeah.
I like British humor. I like British dramas. So that
One
sounds
of the characters, there's one, I had also a really odd relationship. We are like diatribes today. We are just living in digressions. But like
totally.
one of the characters was the same name as my dog, so I had a really hard time reading it with like, my dog's name is Ellie. One of the main characters in this book is Ellie. So I and a very a character with a lot of conflict was Ellie. And so as I'm reading it, I can hear my dog, panting or just like snoring, and the other like, so that was funny. And the other character was named Poppy. Like there
Okay.
was a character named Poppy, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I can't. This would be a great invention for like this the Kindle or something. If you could just like, if a name triggers like something for you, you could just go in and like replace Poppy with Sarah, like a name that doesn't have any feeling. Just go
Uh-huh.
like, all right, you're now Sarah. I'm done. I don't want to deal with Poppy anymore. But I couldn't take it seriously. Like, really, Poppy? Poppy? That's a dog's name. I got two dogs in this book, and they're the main like emotionally like lightning rod characters. So
Apologies to any listeners named Poppy.
it just was hard for me to read. I'm sorry. If your name is Poppy, please leave a comment. Um anyway,
Well, that's a
let's get
strange
into
place to segue,
right.
but let's get talking about manifesting. I just really wanted to talk to you about it because I hear a lot about it in our industry. You know,
Right.
it's not constantly there, but every year or so I'll hear a bunch of blog posts or a bunch of writers talking about manifesting what they need and what they want for their business, and there's a lot of books written about it. I just read one, and so it comes in waves. I'll see a lot of the law of attraction or Think and Grow Rich, or one book that I really like, and I'm going to talk about in a little bit, is Write It Down, Make It Happen. I just finished reading Manifest Your HEA, Get Unstuck and Create Your Happily Ever After. So these books come in, and so it just seemed important to talk about and to just sort
Yeah.
of poke at it a little bit and find out, like, what do you think about manifesting? Do you think it works? How do you do it in your world? Do you ignore it? Like, I just wanted to talk to you about it.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting, I think as we move away from the okay, so when I think of manifesting and where it fits into sort of creative practices, business building, um, creative practices, business building, sort of like entrepreneurial mentalities. I think I think we as like people have like kind of moved away from kind of prescriptive action, right? There's no like single path to
Hmm.
get to author success. There's no single path to building your business. There's many paths. And I think there's also many different definitions and versions of success. Like I think that you could run this business for profit. You could run this business to meet a social idea, a social justice idea. So I think that because we've become like so much more diverse in our approaches and in our outcomes, I think it's more, and there's no prescription for how to do things. I think it's important to be able to manifest some of what we're talking about, because you're not going to find that path, that envision that outcome off of some blog you read. It has to come from here. You have to be able to manifest what that stuff is, because it's not out there. And do you agree? Do you feel like
Yeah.
there's no road? You have to envision it. There's no,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what helps people be successful, is picturing it, and defining what success is for them first before they go out and reach for it, because people have such different versions of what success is.
right. And manifestation might not have been necessary 30, 40 years ago, when you went to school, you got a job, you worked in that job for 30 years until you retired, and then like, or you were going to publish a book by writing it and getting an MFA and then writing a book. And then like when there were these routes, like you didn't have to conjure, but
Yes
now
and
that
no.
person.
I get that. I,
Mm,
I agree with that too. But also there's always been entrepreneurs, even hundreds
right,
of years ago. Like if you
right.
wanted to be the stonemason for your village and get that job from the
Build the next
landowner,
church. Yep.
yeah, if
No,
you
yeah.
wanted that, you had to be like, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to go talk to this guy and this guy. And, like you have a plan and you
Right,
make it happen. So
right. And so,
I think that manifesting has been around forever.
right. But I think more of us have to be I think more people in their day-to-day lives have to have the same skills as an entrepreneur, as opposed to 30, 40 years ago, when you really like you didn't have to think like an entrepreneur to go get a job at an insurance company.
Correct. Yeah.
Now you have to.
Hmm.
And because everything's side giggy, everything is create your own path. And like I don't look at my friend group, and I have a couple of friends that took like a very conventional path to their to where they are, but not many. Most people sort of cobbled it together, took two things, made it one. And I think that's what's missing. What can be missing in that is like, yeah, people who just give it a thorough commitment to their like sort of their envision, the power of their imagination, the power of their like vision. um and I think
I
that can be
just
missing.
realized, I'm thinking back, I think I might be the weird one in my friend group then.
Are
Like
most of
my
your friends pretty conventional?
yeah, when it comes to their jobs, they all like work for the city or work for, a nonprofit or work for, they've got a 9 to 5. I don't trying to think. Apologies to anybody else. I mean, my writer friends obviously have their own like side gigs and do their own thing, but
And I think people pine for this, because I think the creative, like being able to envision something and come up with something, um, it's very empowering. Like my wife and my mom were on the back porch last Sunday, and my mom was commenting how she'd been to a garden show, and somebody at the garden show had like 300 varieties of tomatoes. And before I knew it, my wife and my mom had come up with this business plan where they were going to sell stickers, little terrariums, used paperbacks, and tomato starts. Like, and so it's this, they're coming up with something that doesn't exist, and And, you know, it's creative, it's fun. And like, you know, if they were going to go through with it, like it starts there. They're manifesting this idea. People want to do that because boy, it's rough. It's rough following a script in life.
Well, it's boring. And like you said, it's not
Yeah.
creative. And I think that, well, I don't want to say it's boring because
Some people thrill
it
it.
would be boring for me. I think I would not be creatively challenged and I would feel unhappy in some more conventional jobs. And so and I don't want to take that away. I don't want to take away an experience from somebody else that does have a conventional 9 to 5 job that fulfills them. You know, if
Right.
they love
Right.
what they're doing, that's all that matters. So, you know, we're not trying to like diss
No,
conventional
absolutely
jobs
not.
here, but yeah, knowing what success means to you and knowing how to get it starts with being able to visualize it. Yeah. And what you were
Right.
saying earlier about picturing the client that you were writing to, that's totally manifesting
Yeah.
and is part of the process. So maybe we should talk a little bit about how to manifest something that you want in your business or that or even in your life that's unrelated. Like visualizing is a huge part of it. I think that well, I think the first thing that you need to do is like you said with the tomato start idea, like having the idea is
Right.
the first thing, you know, that you would do. Having an idea, um, and however you create that idea, whether it's just daydreaming or you're talking, you know, collaborating with someone, or maybe you see a hole in the market and you think, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had a tool that did this? Oh, well, maybe I could create that tool. And, you know,
Right.
or
I can, yeah.
yeah. So having the idea is first. And then um I think I think writing it down really does make a big difference. Writing it down
Yeah.
on paper so that you have a paper trail for this idea that you can reread over and over again and like remind. So there's something in the book, Write It Down, Make It Happen, which I really enjoyed reading. It's by Henriette and Klauser. And I read it 15 years ago, maybe now, maybe longer. But what the thing I still remember is she brought up something called the reticular activating system. It's this like
Wow.
cluster of nerves in your spinal cord, and it's kind of like the bouncer for for information. So it's part of what helps your brain like filter out stuff that's not necessary. So
Hmm.
it's the thing when you're in a bar and it's really noisy and you could hear your name, you know, being called out
Right.
from across the bar. That's what trips and starts working. Or it's when you the example in the book was if you're thinking about maybe buying a car and you go ahead and you just do it anyway, and maybe it's a silver Honda Accord. I don't even know if that was the example in the book, but now all of a sudden you're going to see silver Honda Accords
The chords.
everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere that you look. You're going to park next to them. You're going to see them in the car, you know, when you're driving on the freeway. You're going to, so
That's Bader-Meinhof syndrome.
it's what?
It's called Bader-Meinhof syndrome, where it's like your brain, like when once you identify something as like my wife always describes a story about green Subaru Foresters. When she was in Atlanta, she had the only green Subaru Forester, so it was like in her mind, like, and then when she drove out west to get to Portland, she just noticed like everybody drives green Subaru Foresters. Like, is that true, or was she just paying attention to, I mean, it probably is true in a market sense, but when your mind is attuned to something, you start to
Exactly.
see it everywhere you go.
Exactly. And it's your
Yeah.
brain's way of so it's kind of like the law of attraction. It
It
always
is. Yeah.
seems sort of woo woo for people, but it's actually a little bit like there's some brain stuff there. It's your
Right.
brain bringing you information to you
Right.
Like, oh, you want this thing? You've written it down, you've visualized it. All right, let's be on the lookout at brain, so while you were consciously not looking for it, maybe your brain is subconsciously filtering out the information that you
Right.
are actively looking for. So, it's not really magic, it's just brain science, but still,
Right.
it's kind of magic.
A lot of what we call magic is actually brain science.
The reticular
Um,
activating system. Yay for the win.
when it, for me, when it came to, that envisioning that client, I mean, I can't even comprehend what I was doing before, to be honest. Like, I don't know what I was doing when I was writing or like developing site content. I can't picture it, but now, I have pictured, a person. I think I was just writing because like I knew I had to write and I knew I had to write on subjects. And so I would just write on subjects. And it probably read a lot like a sophomore, history paper where it's like write about the Boston Tea Party. And then somebody's just like the Boston Tea Party. Like, and not knowing what your ideas are, what your messaging is, what you're trying to get across, what you feel about something. So I just became really I started picturing who my client was. My ideal client is this, and I have different services I offer, and for each one of those services, I've created sort of a composite sketch of the people I've worked with, the people I've wanted to work with. I didn't leave that out. The people who are, I want to work with local people. I would love to have a client that I could get in my car, go meet them for coffee instead of getting on Zoom. That would just be great. So I started manifesting that, like, okay, I'm writing to a Portland audience. I'm writing to, in the screenwriting part of my business, I'm writing to that person who's taking the business of writing, of making a movie seriously. I'm writing to someone who doesn't have a ton of experience, but they want to, they're looking at building a film business. So I've just pictured who that person was and started, just when I sit down and write a blog, I'm writing to them, and
Mhm.
I'm thinking of what they want to hear or what I need to tell them in a voice that they'll trust. And then that's how we get there. It has been, it's not magical, it's brain science, but it's
Mhm.
felt magical to feel those people come back in droves. And
Mhm.
it is, yeah, I didn't get the idea. I didn't have ideal clients until I started writing to the ideal client. And now a good number of the people that I meet are the people that I'm writing to. So
That's exciting.
yeah,
It's like seeing it in action.
yeah, yeah. And now it feels strange. Before, when I got a client that was ideal,
Mhm.
it felt weird. It was like, God, how did this person get to me? I would just kind of crinkle my brow and feel like this isn't real. This can't be real. Now
Mm.
it's the opposite. When that person shows up in my email box and they're really, they're the right person. It's like, I know exactly why they're here. When the other person comes in, I'm like, how did you get here? Like, how did,
How'd you
you
get
know?
past the gate?
Yeah. So yeah,
So
I think
what
it
do
all
you I have a question about that. I want to interrupt you here. So there was a time when I was manifesting, like just actively telling the universe and writing it down everywhere I could, and envisioning and visualizing more clients coming in. Like I need more paying clients. And I would start, you know, seeing that in action. The universe wants to give me money. They were bringing me clients and gigs, but some of the jobs were like that off. So, like one was a tutoring job. Like I'm not a tutor, and
right,
I've never considered really, that's not part of my business plan at all.
right,
So that was one that kind of got past the gate. Like, what kind of, that's weird, but it was a paying gig, like, so what do you do with stuff like that? So if you've said, all right, you've had your idea, you've written it down, you've visualized it, and it shows up, but kind of weird, like, do you say then, no, this is not part of my business plan, this isn't what I do, no, thanks for the opportunity, but you know here's a resource, here's somebody else that might be able to help you, and like pass that on graciously? Or do you say, well, maybe I should be open to receiving what it is I want and need, but just not in the way I expected? How do you know which way to go? Like, is it intuition? Is it what do you
I
do?
always say that 10 years, I'm coming up on 10 years in 1 month, less, I'm looking up at the date, in less than a month, it'll be 10 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Um, it's weird. It's been a weird 10 years. Um, 10 years ago, I took everything that came in, and because I was only trying to stay afloat, like my whole mindset was like, don't fail, you don't want to go backwards. You have to keep making money. You have to keep making money. And that put a lot of pressure on me. It put a lot of pressure on everyone around me, particularly my wife, who I think watched me sort of like like a ship without a sail, just like getting tossed around and not knowing where it's going. Um, Now when I get those things, like, because I know I'm looking for, I have this, I have what I have a very clear vision of what I want, and I don't have a hard time. I don't struggle getting it. It's work to get those clients. I have to continue the messaging. I have to continue the conversion. I have to do all of the things. But time and experience says they're going to be there. When I get someone that doesn't, that it's just, I look at it like this would just be a money job, I refer that out. If it's something that's completely like unrealistic, um, or it's not realistic, or it would not be appealing. I don't want to hand anybody work that, 4-letter word work that's just work. But if it's not in my wheelhouse, I have a handful of people that I send things to, and they graciously accept it, or they tell me it's not for them either. And then I just tell that person, this is not the place for you, in different terms. But yeah, I think that, like, I would caution against manifesting something around. I think manifesting a good relationship to money is interesting. I may consider doing that because I have an up and down relationship with money, like most people. Um, but I think, like, when it comes to the client, like, you're not manifesting money coming in, you're manifesting client relationships that are profitable. To me, you're manifesting client relationships that are mutually profitable. You're giving them a good product, and they're keeping the lights on. And that's another part of it, not just the ideal client and what they want, but what their relationship to the work is. You want people who are going to, I've had clients who like hire me and then like just run away scared because they don't know, because they're freaked out, or they don't know, like they don't know what work is involved, or it becomes this like,
It's harder than they
trick.
thought, or
Yeah. So and I think that's I want people who have a good relationship to their project, to their what they're doing. So that's, yeah, I think you also, if you go just for money, then you're just going to get someone with a paycheck, who's going to make a paycheck, and that doesn't nurture your business the right way. So I think you have to manifest, like, I manifest the relationship a lot. I do.
so this kind of sounds like what you're saying is be careful what you wish for, but then also be open to receiving what you need in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you don't have money, then yeah, just bringing in business is key to keep you going. But once you get that churning, I think you can fine tune it and start
Mm,
manifesting like something more specific. And I think that manifestation like has, it gets energy as you get good at it. So, you
mhm,
might not trust it. You might start manifesting like, I need my first client, whatever it is. And then as it builds and it builds and it builds, I think then once you can trust it, you can sit back and say, um, wait, I want to manifest the right client. I want to manifest this person. And
mhm.
so, yeah, you can be a little more specific.
So it's kind of like a muscle sort of, that you have to work out and
I
build
think,
that muscle. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely, it doesn't come like instantly or easy, but I think as you continue to work on the faith part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and the belief part of it, and then, and just like anything else, you've got to do it X number of times before, until it becomes habit. You have to do it X number. I sort of believe in this sort of like, kind of like 3-week thing. I have this 3-week, like, once you've done something for 3 weeks straight, it's now a habit. Like you've sort of internalized it as something that you do. You're not just like, oh, right, I'm going to the gym. Like, no, I go to the gym. Like, this is what I do. It becomes, you've
Mm.
internalized it. And
So when I
I,
was reading, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
When I was reading Manifest Your HEO, the new book that just came out by Heather Hildenbrand, HEA, as we mentioned last time, is happily ever after in kind of the romance writers lingo, but also it was a
I
play
didn't
on
know that.
words. No,
I didn't know that.
there was also a play on words because she, or an acronym, I guess. So her HEA stands for heal, embody, and allow. So she was talking about, healing your trauma around, certain beliefs. And then embodying. So what you just said was the embody part. So
Right.
basically that you can't achieve something by only changing your behavior. You have to change your identity. So going to the gym, since you brought that subject up. So I've just started doing yoga again. And well, maybe that's not a good idea. So let's go back to your your gym idea. So if you go to the gym and you force yourself to go to the gym and you don't really like it, but you're just, you're trying to build that habit. And so at that point, you're just changing your behavior. You've
Right.
changed your behavior to going to the gym now. But
Right.
after a while, and that, for you, it's 3 weeks, for somebody else, it might be longer or
Right.
whatever. But at some point you just become the person that goes to the gym. I think the example they use in her book was if somebody offered you a cigarette, you would either say yes or no. Yes,
Right.
because you smoke, or no, because you don't smoke. You don't like decide, well, maybe should I, I've never smoked before, but I could maybe, that's not what's going to happen. Usually you identify as a smoker or you identify as a non-smoker.
Right.
So yes, identity, I think embodying that core belief is part of the manifesting piece, I think, is
Right.
getting to the place where you can. Another quote I really liked was sitting in the energy of solution and possibility and change. That there's
Right.
another quote that I really, really, really loved was, there are plenty of answers. Just because you haven't thought of them yet doesn't mean they don't exist.
Right. I
So
agree
that
with
was
that.
really chilling. I really loved that quote and wrote it down a bunch of places. So yeah.
That's,
And
for me, that's like a big conflict resolution mantra, is that it's like, I am on the side of the solution. Like it, and again, the first few times that I've said that, I was like changing my behavior, but now I feel like that I've embodied that behavior, and like, I'm not, winning an argument isn't as meaningful as solving the problem. And so I think that being on the side of the solution is, yeah. I think too, like, it's, when it comes to writing, we got to, as we wrap up, we got to wrap back around to the writing part of it. It's
mhm.
like that change happens when you say, you go from saying like, I write whenever I can before work, or like, I write, sometimes I write on the weekends, to I'm a writer. Like that, you are now manifesting that a writer writes whenever they can, a writer writes on a schedule, whatever the kind of writer you are, you're manifesting that. When you tell your, when you're still in that changing behavior, is where you're like, oh, I write when my kids go to sleep and I can get, like, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's a step towards manifesting that just bigger picture of like, you
Here,
are the thing.
here's a question. What is the difference how is this different than goal setting? What's the difference between goal setting and manifesting? Is there one difference? I think there's a difference.
There is, and I just sort of like balked at like how to say it. Um, I think manifesting is I'm going to here's the client that I'm writing to. Here's the client that I want. I'm going to manifest that ideal, who that person is. Goal setting is I'm going to convert 50% of the leads that come through my website into clients, or like it's finding something specific in the it's taking something, the results of manifestation, and quantifying the results of that. All right, now that those new clients are, I'm starting to see that manifestation happen. I'm going to convert 50% of these people. I'm going to make more money this quarter than last quarter. I'm going to find a client. I'm not just going to find the right client. I'm going to find one from Portland, Oregon. Like, you set goals. I think once you start mastering that, like, ability to envision and create the picture of success, like, what are the specifics around that success? That's the way it works for me. I don't know if that works the way for everybody.
I think also you can set goals during the process of manifesting. So in Heather's book, when you're healing, you can set goals for yourself to heal. So maybe it's finding a therapist, or maybe it's finding ways that help you heal. And then when you're going into the embodiment phase, you can set goals for that. Practicing being on the side of the solution, or whatever that means for you. And then when you get to the allow stage, setting goals around allowing, like, that's really hard. That's the part that I can have the faith, I can set the goal, I can set the intention, I can, visualize, I can do all that. But then it's like the allowing part, because I'm a very action driven person. I think,
Right.
I set a goal, I make the action steps, I'm working towards it. I need the checklist. How do I allow? What is the checklist for allow? So that's the part
Right.
that I get kind of stuck on. And I think that faith is probably the part,
Yeah.
that I get kind of stuck on, maybe.
Well, I think it's different. I think we're talking about our own versions of this, and I think everybody's got a different way this would work for them.
Mm-hmm.
What for someone is a statement of faith, as another person sounds absurd. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you have to find your own statements of faith and your own affirmations, your own ways of giving yourself grace for not doing it one day. That doesn't mean you're suddenly not a writer. But I think also I think everybody just has their own, I don't want to say barrier, because barrier is so fine, it feels final to me, but obstacle, everybody has their own obstacle in this, whether it might be health, it might be time, it might be boy, I really struggle at following through on my to-do list, or everybody has their obstacle. You just have to find your way around it too. That's part of any of it, because I think that my kid is 8 years old. He can manifest anything in his imagination. I mean, he picks up a stick and he runs out, and all of a sudden he's fighting some battle for Middle Earth, and he's can manifest that. But I think as we get older, we unlearn we get sort of the part of our brain that can create something out of nothing gets inhibited by school and parents and all those other things. So I think unlearning all of that limiting behavior has got to be rough. And I can't imagine. I mean, I feel like it's become a part of my habit, but starting from scratch, it's rough. You're kind of telling a lifetime of indoctrination to go away, and no, I can create a cart that's got stickers and terrariums and tomato starts and books. It'll work.
It'll work.
Right. Yeah, you have to just push past those obstacles and limiting beliefs. Limiting
Yes.
beliefs are the
Limiting
worst.
beliefs. Well, cool.
We all have them.
Yeah. I this was a cool conversation. I
Absolutely.
liked all of the places that we went with that. And that's kind of what I've been thinking about in the last couple of weeks too. Is manifesting something that I can actively put in my business practice to get some of my business wishes, dreams, goals met? And what practices would I then have to do in order to make that happen? And where are my limiting beliefs, and what baggage do I have around, attracting the clients that I want, and the money that I need to, live on.
Right. Right.
So, yeah. And how do I embody that solution? How do I allow this back, into my life? And it's interesting to me. And that's kind of where my mind has been. So thanks for talking with me about
Oh, my
it.
pleasure. Thanks for
Um,
bringing it up. It's empowering. So like take a step and then just take another and take another.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Awesome. What are we talking about next time? Next time,
I don't know.
well, I think that we should shift and talk about some nonfiction.
Oh
We've been
boy.
talking about fiction a lot, and I know that
Yeah, we have.
you are a nonfiction writer as well as a fiction writer, because you write
Right.
blog posts. And
Yep. Yep.
so, and I write memoir and books for writers. So I think that we can talk a little bit about what nonfiction books need for, the genre expectations of a nonfiction book are to have a clearly defined problem and a solution at the end of it. So we can talk about how to write clearly defined problems and have solutions. So I think that's what we'll talk about next week.
Love it. I'll be here.
I'll be here too.
All
Talk to you
right.
next time.
See
Bye-bye.
you then. Bye-bye.